This is the 10th of our 11-week workshop on the research series that Lynn Rogers and myself, Alexi MacKinnon, are giving. Tonight we're going to find out why we've chosen this particular time period in the Earth's history to incarnate. It should be quite interesting. As you know, we've had a lot of very valuable information, understandings, and healings that have taken place in the last 9 weeks. So we're looking forward to this evening, and I do hope that you'll stay with us and enjoy this evening. Thank you. Go for it.
Wait, our cameraman isn't in place.
Yeah, that's all right. Oops. I'm going to do a close-up. I know, close-up.
Tell me when to talk.
Go for it. You're
Okay.
on.
Hypnotherapist. We are tonight continuing in our research and healing journeys in time series on the topic of why we chose this lifetime and what our last life on the earth might have been. Edgar Cayce said that the period we find ourselves in between 1958 and 1998 means that we will experience the greatest period of testing that the world has ever known, and that no soul living during these years will escape the lash of the whip to the ego. In her book, Sex, Karma, and Reincarnation, Jessica Madigan, my teacher, wrote that apparently there is a plan of life before we enter the body, but after we are here, we may deviate from that plan somewhat by the very karma, at least on a psychological lifetime that we experience in certain lifetimes. Last week we discussed the past lifetimes of Edgar Cayce, including those of the wastrel drunkard John Bainbridge, who lived in early America. And of John Bainbridge, as you recall, Cayce stated that as Bainbridge, the entity in the material sojourn was a wastrel, one who considered only self, having to know the extremes in the own experience as well as of others. Hence the entity was drawn to that environ, or how did the master put it? As the tree falls, so does it lie. In an apparent reference to the second Bainbridge cycle, reading 294-8 states that he entered upon that of the Saturn forces, suggesting the probable necessity of a planetary sojourn in Saturn's environs before re-entering as John Bainbridge for a renewed opportunity. This brings up the issue of sojourns between lives. Edgar Cayce said that after you pass from this world, that you, depending on where the tree fell, or where you left off in consciousness, that you do travel in between lives to other dimensions, and that you make rest stops on the astral realms of the planets in our solar system, and perhaps other places. So, that if you were very lonely in one particular lifetime, never married, never had a family, maybe you were going through a suicide karma, you could find yourself going to the environs of the planet Venus, where you would draw on the love vibrations of that planetary experience. And Saturn was the place that you would go, that all insufficient matter, or after you blew it, you would go in order to experience, get ready for possibly another karmic lifetime to help you learn and resolve those lessons. So each, and we have a friend here tonight who's an astrologer, but it's still, astrologers are still exploring how the interplanetary sojourns would show up in your astrology chart. But you might, in your meditation tonight, perhaps you'll discover, have a sense of what planet you rested on between lives. He also said that that each new lifetime is an opportunity for us. So why would a soul such as Edgar Cayce, who had been the high priest Eye of Egypt, Queen Nefertiti's counselor father, and who had, the high priest Rata, and then later Queen Nefertiti's counselor father Eye, and possibly Plato and Lucius in the post-Jesus period, maybe even Merlin at the time of King Arthur, why would he choose to return as a gambler and a drunkard and a playboy as John Bainbridge? I think what the readings are saying, that there are some patterns that we follow, and sometimes at a certain point we do go on a downward trend in order to experience the extremes within ourselves, followed thereafter by an upward progression, accompanied by suffering, patience, and understanding. John Bainbridge reincarnated as Edgar Cayce, who was sensitive and misunderstood. Cayce apparently still had some of the charisma of John Bainbridge, and his marriage, according to my teacher, who knew many of his contemporaries, may not have been absolutely ideal, because at times Mrs. Cayce, although obviously very hardworking and dedicated to him and to her marriage, would complain that if only he would just stop doing all these psychic readings and they could play bridge or do something normal. So in some ways she may not have understood exactly where he was coming from. And it was also said that the people who went to Edgar Cayce for readings may not have been his own people in terms of the best karma, the greatest friendship, but rather could have been people that he owed karmic help to from earlier periods, like as Ra-Ta. I wanted to take now a look at a series of past lives, just to label them, of two entities. These were twin souls, and we've addressed a lot of their past lives earlier in the series, but I wanted to just review all of them and some we hadn't mentioned, and then lead up to what their last lives might have been. And so we can look at a couple of patterns of people's last lives to get you ready for the meditation experience tonight of looking at your own. In the Hebrew period, she was known as Sarah, and he was Abraham. In Egypt, she was a queen in Egypt. She may have been Nefertiti or someone similar to that. And if she were Nefertiti, he would have been Amenhotep, her stepfather. In China, Mei Ling, who was the mother of twins who committed suicide. And he was her husband, who took a second wife to gain more money for his estate. And when his wife experienced her husband taking a second wife, she took her own life, leaving twins to be raised by others. In the Hebrew period, Rachel and Jacob. In Greece, Diana and Apollo. In Palestine, Miriamne and Andrew. At the time of Camelot, certainly a pattern somewhere in the court of King Arthur, not either maybe a Guinevere Lancelot type pattern. At the time of the early Vikings, mother and son. Time of Catherine de' Medici, great aunt and nephew. In early Scotland, a nun and a monk with a 30-year age difference, who were like father and daughter, who turned to writing and contemplation. During the Crusades, a wife and a husband who met and married at 15 until he was killed in the so-called Holy Wars. In the 11th century, Matilda from Flanders and William the Conqueror, his wife. And then in England, an actress and actor who only met at the end of their lives. At the time of Charles II, mother and son. In early America, a very little sister and brother who may have lost their lives on a wagon westward bound. In 19th century England, Elizabeth Barrett Browning and Robert Browning. I'm throwing these out to you just for you to get a sense and a feeling of how souls may change roles and change patterns throughout lifetimes. I think one good point to bring up as we get into specific past lives, how do we know if a pattern, if we were Joan of Arc, for example? What if we identify strongly with Joan of Arc and we even have intuitive messages about her life? We all need to be aware that we can be discovering an accurate past life, or we can be discovering a pattern. We may have lived a life of somebody who stood up for a cause the way Joan of Arc did, maybe somebody who was even sainted by the Catholic Church. And our subconscious identifies strongly with her pattern because it's a clue of our own past life. Whether it's literal or not sometimes takes some discovery, so it's important to keep an open mind with this, which isn't to say that you can't discover a literal, actual past life. But as I was mentioning to a person earlier, if all the people who ever worked in the civil rights movement, for example, came back in the year 2050, many of them might think that they were Martin Luther King, because Martin Luther King is a recognizable figure associated with the civil rights movement. Not everyone might be Martin Luther King, but many people may have done something similar. Somebody who, a conservative of our time, very conservative politically, may come back and think that they were Ronald and Nancy Reagan. But it isn't necessarily true that they were. It means that they lived a life similar to this pattern. So That takes some discernment and some getting familiar with it, but certainly it can be possible that you're discovering an actual exact lifetime or a pattern. So then what would, this list was based on another person's research, and we'll look forward. One way you can tell if a past life is true is that the karmic pattern sort of makes sense. I mean, the talents and weaknesses carry over, and you can see some interconnection with the karmic pattern. It's thought by the same researcher that the soul who became Elizabeth Barrett Browning may have had a very recent life as Saint Teresa the Little Flower. Are any of you familiar with her in the Catholic Church? She lived from 1878 to 1897. She was born in Alençon, France in 1878. Her family moved to Lisieux, where she aspired to be a nun, following her older sister into a strict Carmelite order. And the order was so strict, I mean, there were no pictures on the wall and no adornment, no flowers, no Christmas presents. It was just very, very spare. There she lived in complete austerity. But she blessed all her little deeds. And there were a lot of little deeds because some of the other nuns resented her quite a bit. And so she was given many, many chores, you know, beheading fish in the kitchen and constant scrubbing. And so she kept praying about these and blessing these deeds. She wanted to emulate the simplicity of what she called the child Jesus. She died at age 21 of consumption and tuberculosis, as interestingly enough had Elizabeth Barrett Browning. The abbess wouldn't allow the doctor to give her any painkillers, so she suffered a great deal, and she attained a certain transcendent spirituality while accepting death. She was made a saint for a number of reasons, and one of them was that during World War I, the soldiers on the battlefields in France said that a little Carmelite nun appeared to them holding flowers where they were waiting with their wounds for medical help, and they said that she helped them to survive. Her motto was, "I shall spend my heaven doing good on earth." It's interesting that my own teacher, who's no longer living, identified someone with that lifetime. Now again, she could have literally lived that lifetime, or she could have been one of the sisters of that order, but she felt a connection or a pattern there. And when she began to do clairvoyant readings, which a couple of us in this room has experienced, her spiritual guide was named Maria Teresa. And through the help of this entity or this consciousness, she was able to give countless life readings, fleshing out the Edgar Cayce material through her work. She didn't charge for those readings. She died in April of 1986 in obscure circumstances and in poverty.
What date did she pass away?
I can look it up.
Oh, it's okay.
April.
Yeah, maybe it was April.
Yeah, it should say in here. It should say in here. But I know it wasn't too far from her birthday of March 18th. She had the same birth date as Edgar Cayce. I'll look it up for you. She died in April of 1986. So what are some parallels that we can look at? This person that some of us knew, Jessica Madigan, was certainly meeting a suicide karma. We mentioned this before. Her parents, she was born in Jackson, Mississippi, to parents who were killed at 2 weeks of age when she was 2 weeks old. And she was in a foundling home where this wealthy businessman who was also interested in the intuitive arts walked through the foundling home and discovered her. But his wife had no desire to adopt a baby, so she left for a year, which started her life off on a karmic footing. At age 16, this beloved foster father who had taught her a lot about the ancient wisdom of Egypt, surprisingly enough for a southern businessman, and many other esoteric periods, this Theosophus, killed himself during the crash of 1929. So she lost the one person on whom she depended, and within about a year's time, the mother, whom she had only an ambivalent relationship with, who often called her a little queen, caustically, and who she later felt that she had turned aside in a past life, when she indeed may have even been a queen, and the foster sister and the young man she was going to be married to, and her pets all died. And so we discussed before how she did make a suicide attempt. She was working for a fundamentalist group, and it was during the Depression. She said she weighed about 97 pounds and wasn't going to be paid again for 2 weeks. And the only thing she subsisted on were Cokes, and she didn't even have them. So she lost a great deal of weight beyond the 97 pounds and was near death anyway. She lived in a fundamentalist family that had plenty of food, but they kept telling her to pray. It would be better for her soul. So needless to say, she didn't become a fundamentalist in this life. But she, as we mentioned when we were doing the Old Testament section, she was saved from that experience of suicide by a clairaudient vision of music and hearing the words of the 45th Psalm, which were written by Asaph, and she later felt that Asaph may have been a past life of Jesus, who became the Christ. And through that experience, she did live, and she went on to visit the Virginia Beach after Edgar Cayce died, and became, in the 50s, one of the most popular speakers that the ARE had at that time. However, she was forced to leave due to karmic jealousy of a rival from the past who resented some of her popularity, and also because she probably was the twin soul of Cayce's son, who was now running the ARE and was conservatively married. There was a very close tie between them, but it was a difficult one to deal with in this particular context, so at that time she left. But she went on to teach the Cayce work and to enliven it for diverse groups such as the Women in Corona State Prison, Los Angeles City College. She's lectured all over the world and certainly inspired many young people, including myself. So how did this lifetime, let's say that it could potentially be true, let's look at it as a pattern. How could it parallel some of the ones that we've discussed previously to it? In the lifetime as Elizabeth Barrett Browning loved dogs, and her favorite dog, my teacher was infamous for her love of dogs. Some of the same dogs were pictured with Elizabeth Barrett Browning as with my teacher. Elizabeth Browning idealized her twin soul husband. They wrote poems that enraptured and made romantic their relationship. But it's possible that when we put anyone, any human being, even our own twin soul, in the position of God or goddess, that we have to come to experience them as a human being. And since they were married, he was married to someone else with all these conflicts and problems, she got to see his human side as well and realized that we can't idealize anyone beyond, our own higher self source. She was an excellent metaphysical poet today and may have picked up that poetic influence. In the lifetime of St. Teresa of the Little Flower, or living in that order, those nuns may have overemphasized, she felt, the extreme sweetness and saintliness, made kind of a thing out of it, and even a saint may not be as saintly as somebody who doesn't get that recognition. St. Teresa said, "I will spend my heaven doing good on earth," and my friend Jessica was forced to experience a lot of self-sacrifice and poverty and actually almost celibacy throughout her life, just as a nun would, only she wasn't given the recognition, so maybe there was a karmic carry over there. Cayce says that desire does carry over from one lifetime to the next, so that what you think about constantly and feed upon in this life will carry forward into the next life. If you're very frustrated with your gender and say, gee, if I were only a man, or if I were only a woman, I could do those things, and you think about it all the time, not sometimes, but continually, you may find yourself changing even gender. It can happen. So if you desire more creative expression, or you desire to be married and have children, that's denied to you. These things come to you. If you desire enlightenment and to understand your relationship to the God source, these things come to you. Desire carries forward. I wanted to look at a couple of patterns before we get into your own patterns, to give you a sense of how this can work from our own research. I talked about in the last class the life of Eleanor Marx, who had worked for the earliest socialism and had done a lot of good work to get rid of child labor and the victimization of poor workers in Victorian England. She always wanted to be an actress. Unfortunately, she sort of undid everything that she had done that was good when in 1898 she'd been living with a fellow common law as part of an experiment in utopian marriages. And this is very well and good. She was 42 years of age. They'd been living together for years, and suddenly he was angry at her, so he went out and married a local actress. And she'd also wanted to be an actress all her life, so it really smarted. And so they drank, in those days, laudanum or prussic acid, and she drank prussic acid and ended her own life. But I think from intuitive research, she might possibly have, when you take your life in suicide, it can throw you right back in the body without any kind of a rest and to a difficult karma.
Don't you think she would have come in with stomach problems?
Or she might have
Seriously.
Yeah, she could have, definitely. Definitely, yeah, you kind of bring over your physical scars and things, and it is possible, I'm not sure this is true exactly or not, that she may have come back in post-1906 earthquake period in San Francisco as a poor Irish kind of an orphan in the care of a stepfather who may or may not have been very appropriate, and have experienced a deep emptiness and aloneness, which is really the bottom line karma of the suicide. From intuitive research, she may have died as a young girl in the earthquake of 1906 or thereafter. I'm not certain of that. That's certainly in process. And also from potential intuitive research also, there's another possible recent lifetime that comes up. If you have a desire like to act, and your whole life is spent doing serious research for the underprivileged, but your secret selfish fantasy is to act, you may find that if you fulfill your karmic obligation, that in the next life you get to come back, I think, and have an opportunity to experience that. And I think that's what could have happened to her, or it certainly could be a pattern. Intuitive research leads us to look at a follow-up lifetime after the orphan, where this same entity may have come back to have a very aggressive mother born in a fairly decent family, with a very aggressive mother who steered her into the early film industry in Hollywood in the late 1920s. And there she had the opportunities to play in comedies that were called an amalgamation of sophisticated sex comedy with curiously honest innocence. If this were true, or if this is a pattern, it would seem to me intuitively this soul probably got to come back into some kind of an acting setting. This particular research indicates that this lifetime came to a premature close when this person was at the height of her career, only 26 years old. She developed within her own system a kidney poisoning. Remember, the entity had taken poison. And in those days, too, the makeups may have contained lead. I mean, the makeups were toxic, and sometimes they did full body makeup, the hair dyes, and this person was well made up and well dyed. so possibly due to that. And then on top of it, karmically, she attracted a Christian Scientist mother, and when she went into a delirium and a fever, the mother, who may have even been jealous of her success, who knows, refused to allow her to get medical help. And so she lay in this well-to-do house that her earnings had produced, delirious, poisoned by forces within her own body. And this could be a karmic end for a previous suicide. It's interesting that this, quote, sex symbol of the movies also wrote a novel or play for use in films, and that when she was somewhat restless due to disappointments in her life, that she journeyed to San Francisco, ironically, and wandered about the town, where she may have lived as a waif before and died. It's hard to say. This same entity had a husband who physically could not engage in lovemaking and had a real problem with that himself, so he committed suicide, causing even more of a scandal to take place. What could we learn from this, if this is true, or if this is even a pattern of a truth? We can learn that desire does carry over from one lifetime to the next, and that whether you're very glamorous in one lifetime and very plain in another lifetime, whether your life is fortunate or tragic, you are still you, and in your journey in the earth. And there's one more soul pattern I'd like to consider tonight, and that's of an entity who had a recent lifetime, died in 1910, called Andrew Jackson Davis. I think I have his picture here I'd like to share with you. Andrew Jackson Davis is an American medium mystic, and he's considered by some people to be the forerunner of Edgar Cayce, or the John the Baptist, as it were, to Cayce's later effort. Andrew Jackson Davis was born in Blooming Grove, New York on August 11th, 1826. He was the last child in a family of 5 daughters, and he was born to an alcoholic father. As a boy, he was sickly and nervous. He was called Sleepyhead by his classmates. Like Edgar Cayce, he wasn't much of a student, and he did hear counsel from what he called a very low, clear, sweet, dreamy spirit entity who helped him to heal himself of his illnesses. Later, Davis tried to further his education. He went to an experimental Quaker school, and he went on to become an instructor of other kind of urchin boys, although his own education was extremely limited. But he was very attracted when he heard a lecture on magnetism and mesmeric trances, which were the form of the 1900s. Their interest in psychic phenomena was in mesmerism and forms of hypnotism. He was fascinated by this, and a friend who had some experience with this blindfolded him, and they discovered that Davis could read, as Edgar Cayce did. He could look at a person blindfolded in this kind of mesmerized state, and he could read the inner organs of the body and diagnose illnesses. So his reputation as a medical clairvoyant spread through Poughkeepsie, New York, where he lived, and throngs began besieging him for consultations. After a visionary experience following one of those sessions, where he'd been led in this hypnosis, he awoke feeling kind of disturbed in some ways, went home to his rooms, and went into a deep sleep. At this point, remember, he's only 17 years old, very young. And he said he was awakened by a woman's voice. It sounded even like his mother or a woman, who spoke to him and told him to dress and go stand outside alone under the stars, which he did. And there, apparently, he had a night of visions. He saw many apparitions, including an old Quaker man and the Greek physician named Galen. Not too long afterwards, he also had a vision in his room of being given a magic staff. Soon after these mystical experiences, Davis announced that he would only give medical advice during the periods he was mesmerized. Before this, his public appearances included demonstrations of all aspects of hypnotism because he had an unusual, special, extraordinary gift with hypnotism. So he at first demonstrated all the particular phenomena that could happen, and then he decided to focus more on the medical diagnostics. But it was also at this period that Davis began dictating a series of revelations, quote, for the present and future benefit of mankind, unquote, in which he would answer such modest questions as, what is life? What constitutes the soul? In other words, he was going to answer all human questions. At this time, he was a few months older than 19 years old. For a physical description of Davis, in this heyday of spiritualism, book suggests that he was... An early engraving depicts him as a handsome young man with penetrating eyes, a bushy beard along the line of his chin, a heavy crop of hair, and a high forehead, which one phrenologist noted expanded broadly in the region of ideality. He appears to be a kindly, ingenuous, and intelligent farm boy, and though one writer found that his black eyes, heavy masses of dark brown hair, and beard gave him a weird and supernatural mien, there are no visible signs of a crackpot or charlatan. Later, when his beard covered his face, he came to look like one of the milder Hebrew prophets.
Did it mention his favorite car?
No.
It's an inside joke, sorry.
The text asks, how did this 19-year-old, uneducated, starry-eyed country boy manage to amass the enormous amount of material, the technical terms from half a dozen sciences, the knowledge of astronomy, geology, the Bible, and biblical history that his book reveals? Diffuse and speculative as the volume is, it gives the impression of having been written by an intelligent, widely read, and highly imaginative graduate of one of the better universities of the day. Yet there is good reason to believe that Davis had not received more than 5 months of formal education, and that he had made little effort to educate himself. Some critics would go on to accuse him and say that some of his work resembled certain works that were popular at the time. One was called Chambers' Vestiges of Creation. And there was another metaphysical philosopher elsewhere named Emanuel Swedenborg that some of you may have studied, and they said that his work paralleled that in some ways, but Cayce's work paralleled other sources, so it's hard to say. Others said that he was such a specially gifted hypnotic subject that he had a sense of osmosis and could have picked up from articles or lectures bits and pieces of information. And there was a critic in the early 19th century, Frank Podmore, who read Davis's divine revelations with care and commented, and this fellow wasn't very generous normally. He said that despite pretentious ignorance, the skeptical scholar said, despite mistakes in grammar, fact, and logic, misty metaphysics, and second-hand socialism, there is a certain imaginative quality in the work which gives it an independent value. What the clairvoyant poured out was not merely undigested fragments of other men's ideas. There is in the book a fairly consistent theme of thought. Davis had, in fact, realized something of the orderly progression from the primeval fire myths and so on and so forth. It was partly because he could appreciate the bigness of the ideas with which he dealt, and in a semi-articulate, barbarous fashion could make other people appreciate them too, that Revelations had such an extraordinary and immediate success. If you were Andrew Jackson Davis, and if you were any particular past life person that you might discover, you will flinch a little bit when you read these things about yourself. One of the ways you can tell it's a real past life is that you won't just see the glory, but you'll see some of the weaknesses. Edgar Cayce said the scars are in your own soul. So that's one of the ways you can tell that it was you. After the Divine Revelations had hardly been published, a scandal broke out because Davis had an affair and later married the wealthy Catherine DeWolf Dodge. She was 20 years older than himself and an eccentric and imperious person. She was in her 40s, he in his 20s, and she was the daughter of a rich man who had accumulated his wealth through slave dealings. Later, after her death, Davis tried to attempt to publish his own works and unsuccessfully to run a bookstore. It was interesting that when his wife passed away, he did write about everything, including marital relations. He wrote about everything that there was, but when his wife passed away, he said he had some mystical experiences where he would tune into where she was out of the body in the realm of, quote, death, the birth into a new world. And for a while he could journey with her, but after a while she was met by her own spiritual affinity or twin soul, and he could go no further. So he kind of wrote indirectly about twin souls. And he was saying that they weren't twin souls, that she had her own twin soul. So where could Davis have gotten his information? Certainly Andrew Jackson Davis, with all his naivety, childlike qualities, trustingness, had all the earmarks of an old soul who had lived many previous lives in the earth. Because again, Casey and Jessica said that if you are an old soul, you're the man who's a little bit childlike, not childish, and the woman who's a little bit childlike, not childish. Very much a little boy or girl in some ways, in that you're trusting, you're sensitive, emotions run deeply, you're going to feel for the plight of the wounded animal, the handicapped person. You're not as know-it-all-ish in some ways. There's a sensitivity that runs deeply in you if you've lived many past lives. So I was going to speculate on how, I thought I was onto something when I was typing this, but I'm not sure it's correct. That's how past life discoveries are. I thought that it's possible that this same soul had lived a life just previous to that. I'll throw it out there, and we'll see how the energies come back. There was a publisher in the 18th century named Joseph Johnson who was associated with that early feminist writer Mary Wollstonecraft that we dealt with last week. And he did attract to him many of the thinkers of the day. He was interested in early medical, he helped to publish early medical work, politics, religious work. I mean, so he had a wide access to all of the thinking in the revolutionary century, 18th century. And it's interesting that Andrew Jackson Davis was able to write about, in addition to everything else under the sun, he also wrote about relationships, ideal relationships. And since this publisher had something to do with that early woman author, Mary Wollstonecraft, who wrote a lot about women's situation and family relationships, it's possible that he may have subconsciously or incorporated this. I'm absolutely not certain of this, the veracity of this lifetime. And also that Andrew Jackson Davis tried to open a bookstore and publish his own work could have been a throwback to that time. I don't know for sure. It's also, from intuitive research, it's also possible that Andrew Davis had lived as a man who settled in the early American lands. Remember, he had the vision of the wise old Quaker who helped him? Sometimes you can have a vision of your own past life self. He also had a vision of the Greek physician, Galen, and he may have been Galen or been a pattern like Galen. And of course, if the publisher, Joseph Johnson, were him, interested in publishing the earliest medical books and works, this could tie back to the Greek life as Galen. It's a possibility. Joseph Johnson was described, though, was also sickly and suffered from chronic respiratory problems. He was a successful businessman, but he was somewhat, his character was rather stiff at times, and I think here's a good description of him. He's described as sort of an even mix of friendly interest and altruism and secretive cold indifference is his about an equal mix of cold indifference and altruistic feelings for others. So it's hard to say. He covered up a lot of his tracks. He was very secretive in terms of his dealings, and that particular soul, it may not have been Andrew Jackson Davis, was he was a lifelong bachelor. He was either indifferent to women or secretive about his dealings with them. And in the 18th century, if you were supposing he were gay, and he did have an association with a bisexual man, a friendship. He also had a young nephew that in adoption only. It's hard to say. In that time period, it wasn't very easy to have any alternative preferences, so it's hard to say about that gentleman. So other intuitive research could indicate the past life as a Quaker, as Galen. It's also from the other intuitive research, it's possible that he was one of 11 children of the disciple Andrew and his twin wife Miriamne, may have been the eldest son. It's interesting that names will persist. You know, Andrew Jackson Davis may have been the child of Andrew. You see names persisting and reweaving themselves from life to life. I also think, from my own personal research, that soul might have lived a short life as a black man in slave time in early America, because when he married his wife, who was older, through that marriage, a lot of wealth came to him and help for his work from her father, who had traded in slavery. And what if you are mistreated as a slave? Oftentimes, you draw back your own monies at a later time. So how can you, looking at these patterns for your speculation and stimulation, I want you to be thinking about what you think in just a feeling sense might be your last lifetime, and why you might have chosen to be born in this particular lifetime. It's said in metaphysical circles by some that if you discover your last lifetime, you're ready to pick up where you left off. And so it can be very significant to do that. You don't force it, but when it happens, it can be a landmark experience. What could your last life have been? I do Akashic record readings on past lives sometimes, and from that information, as well as the personal research of people who have come to me and that I've shared conversations with, some past last lives that have emerged. One person was a young Jewish woman during Nazi Germany. One woman was an Australian dance hall hostess not so long ago. One fellow was a playboy in the Roaring '20s. One woman founded a troubled modern Catholic order. There was one young woman who had Down syndrome and was mentally retarded. One man thinks he was a Californian settler who came out and had dealings with Indians and Mexican people. And one young woman thought she was a businesswoman on the East Coast and was in business during the stock market crash of 1929. This just gives you some examples of what people have discovered. So where were you? That's what you need to be thinking about. Since each lifetime is an opportunity, and this particular lifetime that we're leading right this minute may be the greatest opportunity for soul growth that we've experienced thus far. Edgar Cayce also said, about the opportunity of being born in a given lifetime, he said, he said it in different ways, but he said, know that the entering of a manifested life is not chance, but through the will of the Father. For he hath not willed that any soul should perish, but hath with every temptation offered a channel, an opportunity, through the choice of the entity, to meet self. Hence know that a life experience is not for self-indulgence, self-gratification, but that all things shall be according to the will of the Creator, in whom ye live and move and have thy being. All phases of thy bodily and mental and spiritual experiences, then, are to be considered in thy study and thy application of thy abilities, meeting thyself, thy faults, and thy virtues in such a manner as to make the experience a growth of thy soul. So live then each day that some portion may add to thy inner, thy better, thy soul self. Thus may ye gain strength, ye may gain knowledge and virtue, in such measures that life with its experiences becomes more and more worthwhile, with more joy. He also stated that we choose all of our life circumstances, that everyone here made kind of implied a roadmap before coming into the body, or a life plan that was laid out as a framework to interface with our free will for a given lifetime. He said that we choose our parents, we choose significant others with whom we will meet, and we even choose most importantly, our deeper mission and purpose. And we may even influence our name. And on names, he mentioned, the Airy Journal of January 1984 mentions that, moreover, what might at first glance appear totally improbable becomes, upon careful reflection, not only plausible but logical as well. The restless soul, with its unsatisfied longings, may understandably seek a renewed opportunity, a chance to relive as closely as possible its former cycle of experience in the earth plane. This is when you pick a name similar to one that you've had before, kind of a repeat pattern. Um, Apparently, the urge to reassume the familiar vibrations associated with a given name in a prior life without necessarily repeating that cycle is not uncommon. And Cayce, some of the Cayce readings suggest that the incoming soul entity is somehow able to wield an influence at the psychic level upon those deciding what its birth name should be. And it's also, this article also mentions that it's a common tendency for souls to reincarnate together in clusters, perhaps working out group karma in this manner. And it's also possible then that you may even pick out the same surname. If you're drawn into a cluster of souls, you've known your parents before. A last name may reflect another name of a previous time, first or last. As a case in point, Edgar Cayce's grandfather reincarnated as his own great-great-grandson, not only taking the Cayce name again, but retaining, this time as a middle name rather than the first, his former name of Thomas. The name was psychically recommended by Edgar Cayce in a reading on the day of birth, but probably at the prompting of the newly entered soul entity. So the fellow now in charge of the Cayce work is named Charles Thomas Cayce, and he had been Edgar Cayce's grandfather. Now he finds himself his grandson carrying on this work in some way. Another example was of a young lady who was sent by her fiancé to Mr. Cayce for a life reading. Not only was her prior identity discovered, but it was found that her fiancé bore the same name as a family in the prior life in Kentucky. The fiancé was a reincarnation of her former father, and so on and so on and so on. So nothing happens by chance, and the name that you have today might have been influenced by you on a psychic and soul level as you drew closer to the entering into your physical body at birth.
You know what I think would be interesting for those that have already gotten some names through past lives or continue to research this with yourself. Hear and feel or understand or, start taking down the different names that you're receiving for over a long length of time that you're researching this. And through numerology, you can break down the vibration, particularly of the first name, because I think the first name is the higher energy you're working with most of your life anyway, even though it's through numerology they ask that you have your complete birth name. And it would be very interesting to see if you come in with a similar vibration to complete for things that you haven't chosen to complete when you've come in before. We might do a little mini research thing on that too.
Well, how did you know what we were going to conclude with before the
pardon.
regression? We didn't talk today, but what I wanted to have all of us do before we go into the regression period is to just take a look. Does everyone have a pencil and something they could write on?
I have some paper.
Okay. This, I might, let's see, we may choose to not, you wanna use the book? Yeah, that's fine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Okay, so our exercise is to get paper and pencil, and for those of you that are in-depth numerologists, it will seem very beginning, but sometimes a little astrology and a little numerology is a good anchor when you go into the meditative state. So, a couple of things. Why don't you take your first name,
Everybody have a pencil, please?
let's take our first name, and our birth date, and our sun sign. Okay, everybody know their sun sign, so you can write that down right away. Does anybody not know what day were you born? January 22nd. Cynthia, what is January 22nd? Our astrologer. That's a cusp person.
Yes, a cusp.
So you're in between Capricorn and Aquarius, so you can put them both down. Okay, and then we're going to do our first names. Make a little, I'll show you a little chart you can use. You won't need to make this. Okay, looking at this chart, give every letter of your name a number. So L is a 3, and Y in this chart is a 7, and so on. And then add these numbers together like a column of addition. 3 plus 7 is 10, plus 5 is 15, plus 5 is 20. And then break everything down to a single digit, unless you end up with an 11, or 22, or 33. So I would add 2 plus 0 is 2. The vibration and numerology of this name, Lynn, that I chose, is that of a 2.
Oh, that last one, the thing,
Okay, you added your name up.
Right.
And then if you end up with something like 21, you just add 2 plus 1. Okay. And if you end up someplace like an 11 or 22 or 33, you can leave that. The next thing to do is just add this together like a column of addition. There are two ways you can do it. One is just to go 9 plus 1 plus 1 and right on down the line. Some people do it by breaking this number to a single digit and then this one. But you want to end up with some final number, and I happen to know that mine is 7. Okay? You may end up with 25. 2 plus 5 is 7, for example.
It'll come out no matter which way you do it to the same number.
Okay?
If you want to shortcut nines, does not change the number. If you add 9 to something, break it down, it'll come out to be the same thing that you added 9 to. So you can ignore 9.
First number is the sun sign.
Okay, does everybody have, so what you want to end
Yeah.
up, what I want you to end up with are 3 things. Your sun sign and 2 numbers. Okay, and if there's,
Joe, why are you ignoring 9?
I added,
Because when you add 9,
Did you knock
say
off one
1,
number?
no, because
you
this
add 9
is,
to it,
breaks
it's
down
10,
to 5,
which
this
breaks down to a 1.
2,
Yeah.
and
Take
9,
2, add
Yeah.
9 to it, is an
16,
11, which
7,
breaks down
and
to
1
a 2.
plus 6
So
is
if you add
7.
9 to
What do you
anything,
get,
it will end
What
up
if you're a 9?
Well, or you
anyway?
can, if you add this across 9 plus 1 is 10 plus
Yeah.
1 is
You
11
could
plus
break
1 is
down
12, and you go all the way down until you get
Yeah, actually, I never did.
34, 3 plus 4 is 7.
If you end up
So you got
at a
34.
9,
So how did you get
it
the
still
7?
won't matter
3
if there's
plus
9s
4,
in the
30.
number, you can still
You
ignore
take
it.
34 and you take
Oh, I
3
see.
plus 4.
Oh my
See,
goodness.
okay, yeah, it's tricky.
So fast, but
Let me see.
if you're going to really look into numerology, then the month has meaning
I
unto
didn't
itself, and
understand
you
that
would
sentence.
break it down just for
Yes.
the month's smallest number.
Did you add your
And the
birthday up
date
in a consecutive series of numbers?
was
What did you get?
23.
So
And
2
the
plus 3
year-
is 5.
And
Two
it
numbers
has
5.
significance,
Oh,
but
I
what we're
see.
looking
Right.
at tonight is the
Yeah.
bottom line.
Well, that was an
No matter
alternative.
which way you do
I
it,
was
it'll
explaining to him how I did it. If you add each of these separately and then add them together, you'll still get a 5. It's just 2 different
If I
ways of
take my
doing it.
9 out of my name, then I'm at
Okay.
7, which
Is
I'm
there
not.
anybody who doesn't have this?
I don't have my sun sign, sorry.
What is your birthday?
You don't want me to take it out of my name, right?
Sure.
You do that.
August
Huh?
what?
August 20th.
So Leo.
To ignore
Right
the
to Leo.
nines?
Oh, I know
Because
that,
it's right to
yeah.
Leo.
All right, and it
625?
should come up.
What?
No, because I have an I in my name, which is the 9.
Cancer.
Oh, that's
Is there
right.
anybody-
That was
You want me to
the-
take it out?
Yeah.
It
Is
does-
there anybody who
comes up
doesn't
to a
have this
7.
information now?
If you leave it in, it should also.
You don't?
come up to
I
7.
Comes
You
out
don't,
to a
okay.
9.
All right, so let's,
Like this one is
I'll look at
6.
that. You're doing something wrong.
okay,
I
before,
don't know, Joe.
okay, does everybody have 3 numbers? All right, so I want you to use your own intuition for a minute and look at your 3 components.
Wait a minute, 3 numbers?
No,
Two
to
numbers?
3 components, 2 numbers and
Oh,
a
okay.
sun sign.
Oh, so
Okay,
the,
this is a very, very simplified and very beginning way of looking at astrology and numerology. You can go into great, great depth with these studies. But I think intuition can work simply or in a profound way. And let's look at these numbers, and I want you to use your intuition a little bit. For example, okay, I know that, let me go briefly through the meanings of the numbers. That'll help you. Okay, the 1 energy, again, very simply and briefly, it's creative, it's enterprising, it represents new beginnings, leadership. The 2 energy represents partnership, counselors, people who work one-on-one with others. The 3 energy is more than one talent, creative talent, the Trinity, creative expression. The 4 energy can build foundations. It can be linked to the planet Saturn. It can relate to karmic testing. It can also relate to building foundations and structures and learning to persevere. 5 is change, variety, travel, communication. You can take notes on your numbers. And 6 relates to harmony, service, sometimes to the family orientation, to being a teacher, one who serves. 7 relates to the mystery teachings, psychology, spiritualism. And 8 relates to its outer success, goals, financial, balancing the spiritual and the material. 9 represents completion of karmic cycles and deep understanding of all life. And that's it. If you have 11s or 22s, that's a special case. Does anyone have that? Which do you have? 11 is, it can be broken down to a 2, but it's also a number of spiritual mastery. You learn a lot of lessons through relationships. You can be in a relationship with 2 independent people, 2 ones, or you can have 2 things in your life that are very important, a relationship and a work. But it's a number, it indicates soul evolution and spiritual mastery. Now, you could be a 1 or an Aries, say, and be very evolved. You could be at the beginning of a new cycle as an Aries. You could be Pisces, the last sign doesn't automatically mean that you're more evolved than anyone else. But do all of you know a little bit about your sun sign, so we don't need to focus on that? Is there anyone who doesn't? What is your sign? Aquarius. Aquarius is an air sign that relates to friendship, brotherhood, sisterhood, new philosophies, saving the world, saving the whales. Sometimes you have trouble saving the ones right by you, but you're very broad in your interests, friendly and detached. Anybody else have a question about their sun sign? Libra is also an air sign. It relates to partnership, balance, close relationships, the planet Venus, the arts, and like that. It's an intellectual sign also, like Aquarius. Anyone else not sure of their sign? Pisces. Pisces is the last sign. It's a water sign. Relates to empathy. Thrilled by Neptune. It can refer to both illusion, mysticism, and self-delusion. There's a lot of sensitivity with Pisces, often soul evolution with a Pisces person, and it's a water sign, deep in feelings. You can study this in much greater depth, but what I wanted to do was now, using our intuition a little bit, look at your 2 numbers and at your sign and ask yourself, why might I have chosen a birth date that ends up in these numbers in this particular astrology sign? Is there any connection I can feel here? And just go with your feelings. For example, Virgo is a sign, it's interested in analysis and giving service, sort of mental and detail-minded. And the 2 indicates somebody who might be interested in counseling others, working one-on-one with others. And the 7 has to do with people interested in psychology and spiritual things. And I think that well sums up what I'm interested in. So maybe that's a clue to me, or a confirmation that that has something to do with what I'm supposed to be doing this time around. Can any of you put together an intuitive feeling of what your sun sign and numbers in combination might be saying to you?
Well, I can from the standpoint of view of communication, friendship, being with others, helping others.
That fits in your soul path and what you're about. Great. Okay, anybody else want to share?
I think I missed something a long way back. Now, my name comes up to the number 43,
So 4 plus 3 is 7.
so that's what yours.
Yeah, so your name is
I
a
thought I
7.
missed
Anybody else have a sense of how they're intuitively, but feel that out for a moment, and as
You
we,
know, I just want to make a comment
Go ahead.
here, is Don and I have talked a lot about this. This is, I'm the type of a person that I feel more comfortable being around people. Or even if I'm home alone, I have to have a radio or something talking with you, communications at all times. That's,
did you find any 5s in your numbers?
yes, I'm fine.
And an Aquarian, so it would be hard for you not to be intellectually stimulated and be
By other
communicative.
people,
Yeah, that fits in.
Lynn, could you say again about the number 8, because that's my birth
Path?
birth date number.
Your
yeah.
destiny path? Well, I invite you to study more in depth, but we have a student, Iona, who's becoming an in-depth numerologist. She can refer people to some books on numerology, and perhaps Cynthia can tell you where to study astrology, which books might be helpful. But looking at a cursory glance, the 8 usually, personally, I associate the 8 with the ability to set a goal in the outside world and attain it. It can be it's supposed to be good for you financially, but I think you're kind of you can be success bound, or it can mean that you're struggling with to balance the material and ambitious part of you and the very spiritual part of you. I don't know that I fully understand the number. I would invite you to study it more. Iona, do you have a comment to her about 8?
That's what I think of the spiritual and material balancing.
Balancing, okay.
Well, it's also the equal balance, the male-female energy, and it's the infinity number. And you're in constant touch with all realms as you're working in balance.
Does
Or
numerology
out of
have
balance,
anything
whichever
to
you
do like
prefer,
the
you know.
partner that you chose in his number and your number?
But there's numerology compatibility that can be studied, and all of these signs, the planets and the numbers and other the lines in your palm, everything these are, I think, just marks of the cycle that your soul chose. And by understanding these mystery teachings, I invite you to study them more in depth. It gives you a jumping off place to you begin to see patterns forming. Whether you go deeply into astrology or lightly into numerology, you're still going to start seeing a pattern forming. And it's kind of like a hologram. You can glimpse a small part of it, and yet it resonates with truth, or you can understand it in greater and greater depth. And but Cayce did say that we do pick our date of birth, our moment and time, and we do overshadow our name, so that these can be clues to what we're here and what we're about. So now I wish you luck in discovering your last lifetime, and also the reason that you chose your present life experience. And at this point, we're going to take a break.
First, we're going to share a little bit of why we
sorry.
have these strange pictures up here.
Yes, we're sharing time.
We have been covering, this is our 10th week of a research series, and we try to bring in a little bit of everything that we've covered over the last 10 weeks, starting from creation and up to our present date. And Lynn and Joe and myself have brought some pictures of us as small people, small beings. I brought a picture of my daughter and myself because I really felt I went through that energy in that era of time when she was about 3.5. And it was relating back to, over here, Joe. A past life that I remembered with my daughter at that particular time in that era. And this happens to be my mother here, but this is my brother and myself. And he came into this lifetime on April 9th. I came in on April 18th. We're both at 9s. We both share an awful lot. He came in with almost black eyes. I came in with very blue. We both have almost the same color green eyes now. We've hung around many lifetimes together. And
Maybe you're twin souls.
no, we're of the twin group though now. Joe and Lynn have some other pictures over here that they might like to share. I think this is really good. I'm sure your mother dressed you in that, Joe, but however, I know you remember a time when you were a cowboy in that energy. And
We brought these to represent
Yeah.
the entrance into this body form and what might overshadow it in the past, just as each of you entered these little baby bodies, and in your past life you may have come from Egypt or from Lemuria or Atlantis or a lifetime as a dancer or any number of places.
so we'll take a short break, and there's cookies and coffee and tea and chat.
And then we'll take a journey and
Yes,
discover.
we're going to take 2 journeys, because we're going to go revisit it, your last lifetime. And then you get to go into spirit energy and see why you chose this. And we'll see what happens beyond that point. So if you all would like to take a break and stretch, come back and let's enjoy. And by the way, I know you're...
If you have any questions or comments, I'm
birthdays,
happy to
you're
field
very
those during
compatible.
our break. Which
Is
one?
that Green Book?
I did mine last week. Take your glasses off.
All right.
If you want to see an example of a possible past life, Jessica Madigan did give Joe a reading before her death and said he could have been Andrew Jackson Davis. And if you look at Joe now and you look at the picture of Andrew Jackson Davis, you can pan it around the room. You can see some similarities in terms of the kind of eyes, the hairline. You're going to look somewhat like yourself from lifetime to lifetime.
Really?
Can you turn so they can all see it?
Maybe next time I'll bring a picture of my father and Augustus Gottlieb Spangenberg, who's a Moravian minister who converted the Wesley brothers, who of course founded Methodism.
Great.
And he was, my father wasn't overly religious in that
Right,
sense, but
thank
he
you.
did look exactly, I mean exactly,
I'd love to
like
see.
that guy,
could you
but
bring-
with shorter length hair instead of a crew cut.
Love to do it. Love to get an example of that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, I want everybody to take a very deep breath. As you do so, if your eyes are not closed, please close them, unless you choose to look at the flame of the candle. Exhaling. Every time you breathe in and fill your lungs, your entire being, feel your body aligning with positive energy that's all in this room. It's completely protected through the holy energy that we all are in our higher selves, allowing ourselves to align to that special energy of remembrance. And breathe in another wonderful deep breath. And exhale. And allow that energy to permeate throughout your body. This time, as you breathe in, begin to see in your mind's eye a huge golden sun of energy way off in the distance. And you can feel all that beautiful energy from the golden sun warming your entire being, allowing your muscles and your body to relax, filling your entire presence full of that golden radiance from the sun. And in your mind's eye, you see that sun so far off in the distance, and yet a direct beam of light is now beginning to come closer and closer to the area you're in, until you can feel that beautiful golden beam of light touch that area between the forehead, the eyebrows, the bridge of the nose, all of that area right there. You can actually feel all that you are with that golden beam of light, and allowing it to absolutely permeate all that you are as this happens and takes place. And now I want you to take one more deep breath. Pull this energy completely through your body, knowing that all that work with you on the other side, all the masters, the teachers, the spiritual, loving beings that work with you and protect you and guide you are now going to assist you to cross over into another dimension of time and understanding. And as you take this long, deep breath this time, I want you to hold it for just a moment. Really fill all that you are. Hold it, and now as you allow this to emit, exhale, you can feel all that you are in your physical presence relaxing, and allow your conscious mind to just step aside and begin to allow your spiritual energy now to permeate and omit from that center and the forehead area, beginning to travel up that beam, that beautiful exquisite beam of golden light, up towards the sun, allowing the energy that you are, all that you have ever been, to become one with the golden energy of the sun. And as you now are in that presence of energy, it is not warm nor is it cold. All that you feel all around you is a magnificent radiance of love as you are in that beautiful presence of all that you have ever been. And as you allow yourself the freedom and all that you are to go wherever you choose now, letting your mind relax, letting your all that you are become one with that energy. You can look back at the earth plane from that solar system, that galaxy of energy, and see the earth and all the universes around you And I want you to allow yourself now to be within the golden pyramid of energy that's within the deepest core of the sun, and the energy of all that we are. And as you feel all that is around you, you know that you're in the center of this beautiful golden energy pyramid. There are many, many records. All of your lives, all that you have ever been, are stored in this golden pyramid. And as you set in the center of this wonderful energy, I want you now to begin to see yourself walking over to the area that contains the last life that you shared with your energy, your remembrance, and walk over to that particular area. And for you, it may be on a scroll, on a crystal, or perhaps one of your guides is now handing you the information in a very secretive manner that only you are going to be able to know. Or listen to the inner voice that you are, and it will begin to tell you where that lifetime took place. And as you are now aware, you feel another beam of energy directly overhead. You can feel all that you are being absorbed into this beam of energy, for this energy will take you into that lifetime. And you will be able to experience with a very detached understanding of that last lifetime. You can feel yourself now being transported into that energy. Now on the count of 3, you're going to find that you're in the center of a mist. 1, 2, and 3. And as the mist begins to clear, you're beginning to see forms, images, shapes, taking on a personalized energy. And allow yourself to experience in detail what is around you. Notice whether it's cool, whether it's hot, dry, moist. Also, what is in the air? What kind of aromas are there? Fragrances. Is it light or dark where you're at? Is this a familiar place for you? And you hear someone coming up to your left. And as you turn and look who that person is, you see they're calling you by name. You can see their lips calling your name. Listen very carefully. And as you observe this person, you're being told of something that's going to take place that's very important to you. And as you both turn to leave, something very shiny as you turn. You can see your complete image, what you're wearing, your facial structure, and that of the physical structure. Look in fine detail at the color of your hair, your skin, your eyes, the garment you have on. Now continue to where you've chosen that you must go. And someone that's very important to you in that lifetime is now coming towards you. You can hear yourself calling them by name. And now know within your own soul if this person is in your present life. Now I want you to go to that very important event that's taking place. And I want you to know what is the reason that you're there and how you reacted to being there. Remaining detached, allow yourself to see if you enjoyed the person that you were. Now I want you to see if there was someone very close to you in that lifetime, to know what part you played in a relationship. And you find that there's something very special about you. Others have told you this, and now you're understanding what that gift and ability is. Know it right now. Now see yourself traveling through that lifetime. It's almost as though you're watching a movie in high speed, allowing yourself to understand why you had chose that lifetime. To the point of your transition, remaining very detached and allow yourself to see yourself crossing over into spirit. Now that you're in that energy of spirit, know that your very high spiritual teachers are with you, the master teachers that have guided you through many lifetimes. And I want you to, almost as though you're watching an entire movie now with your teachers, look at that lifetime, and all of you are discussing why you chose that lifetime. You'll hear your purpose, the lessons, and the ones that you chose not to complete. Allow this to be now. Remaining very detached. If there's anything that you need to forgive, whether it be of yourself or someone else in that lifetime, or many others, allow this, if it's possible within your soul, to be done so right now, and let it go. And know, if you were to understand the color that is so vibrant and ready to help you in healing, feel it, sense it, or see it, and allow that energy to permeate into the energy of that lifetime. If there's any that need to heal from that particular life, let it be at this moment in time. And allow it to go to the higher source of energy. Release it. Now I want you to remember the strengths, the abilities, those things that you can draw on in your present life. Retain them in your conscious mind. And as you are there with those spiritual teachers, you're now choosing your present life. And I want you to listen to the reasons that you have come in to your life at this time, and also the purpose or mission that you have chosen for yourself. And as this is made more clear to you, you now can feel all that you are beginning to decide on the parent or parents that you chose for this lifetime, as though you're just the spiritual energy visiting that person that will be your mother of your lifetime now. Allow your energy to filter around her and go within to feel the birth experience if you choose to do so. Or remain on the outer perimeter of that woman that is your mother of this lifetime. And hear and understand the choice for her, for accepting you as her child. And know to a higher degree the agreement you both made for one another. Know if you had in the past, in other soul memories, been with this parent or parents that you have chosen this time, and understand the reason right now. And as you are in spirit still, knowing in the future, to the age and time that you are, seeing all the stumbling blocks of life ahead of you, knowing what you came in to do and choose at this point in time, know now if there's something you need to change within your life and understand to a better and more hopeful degree of energy. Allow that to be an understanding with you right now. And know if you are on the track of those reasons that you came in for. And if there's anything else that you need to know or understand to complete this lifetime of energy, so that it's made more easy for you. Look at that aspect of self right now. Now that you understand your commitment to your soul, And if you feel that it's time to change that energy in a more uplifting progression, and it needs the healing of your own self, allow this to be right now. And in doing so, forgive yourself and allow you to go on to that which you are here for. Now you feel all that you are being pulled into the energy with the spirit guides one more time. Allowing these remembrances to stay with you. For at this point in time, you are now receiving a higher master guide. Allow yourself to accept the energy if you choose to. And listen to what is to be shared with you right now. And if anything at this point in time has been out of alignment in your physical, spiritual, mental energy, know that you have been blessed with this loving energy of spirit, of all the healing masters that have been with you. Feel all that you are back into balance. Bring back with you in your waking state an understanding now, and a commitment and a given permission to yourself to that which you know you must do. So thank all those that have worked with you, and thank yourself for allowing you this enlightenment. And see yourself once again traveling down that golden beam of energy back into the physical body that you are, allowing yourself to feel so much more comfortable within that physical presence. Taking a very deep breath and filling all that you are with that positive, balanced, healing energy, the knowingness that you are as you exhale. Allow yourself to feel your hands, your feet, your backs. Feel yourself now back into the physical, into this existence here in this beautiful, loving energy, this room that you are with at this present time. And on the count of 5, you feel all that you are completely back. Taking a very deep breath, 1. Exhaling, 2. Knowing that you're completely back, feeling more vitality, mentally alert and awake. 3, allow your hands to move about. Now your feet, your toes, your ankles. 4, taking a very deep breath once again. And 5, back into the here and now. And with those thoughts and memories still very fresh in your mind, just begin to write them down, please.
Lexi
goes home and listens to this, so she can go on her experience. I had a great Indian life last week. Thank you.
Which were you?
I was the, well, we won't even tell you.
Oh, I remember
I'll
now.
tell you
That's right, okay.
later.
Yeah, you had a nice teepee, I remember that.
No, actually, I had a wonderful cave on the top of the mountain.
Oh, I see. Oh, this
Yes, I
Indian-
helped spirits
Indian-
across into the other plane, yes.
Oh, I see.
I didn't have a peace pipe, I had a spirit pipe. They all thought I was a raving maniac, but that's okay. No biggie.
Louis had an interesting life.
Yeah, I must have went and came back real quick because I was, the last one was in like 1939, 1940, right around in there.
Where'd you go?
I was in the Midwest. I was a farmer.
You weren't with me in the concentration camps?
No, I didn't get to go that far. But all I know, I think my name was Thomas. I know I was tall, blonde hair, like yours, and thin. And I was married, had 2 kids, about a girl about 7 and a boy about 5.
Were you able to relate them to anybody in your lifetime now?
No, but yeah, I kind of had a feeling that my wife then is still alive now.
Hmm.
You gonna find her again?
And you thought you died during World War II?
Yeah, probably, maybe like in a ship or something. Now that I'm talking about it.
Very good.
I'll
Did you
check
get a
my-
last name on it?
No,
Oh,
just Thomas. And it wasn't, it couldn't fit Tom, it had to be Thomas.
Were you a farmer before you went
Yeah,
into this? Yeah, that's the
yeah, I was like out in the,
Louis loves his plants and
Oh, then that
gardening.
would connect.
Yeah, he really does. He nurtures them and really enjoys being in the yard.
What do you feel you were learning in that life?
being a rancher, I guess.
Right.
Taking care, maybe.
I know, I had a heck of a time trying to find my, my last past life. It was like,
Come on, which
My-
book is it in?
no, we found the book, it just, they weren't in order, so they had, I was going like through 10 lives, and then I finally found one. But then that wasn't my last one. I did go to China though.
Okay.
That one I've got to get into. I'm into Oriental stuff. I like Oriental
Yeah.
stuff and everything. So
Did you understand your purpose for this lifetime?
finish what I didn't do last time. That's about it, really.
Yeah.
And I really didn't find out what my purpose was besides being as I am now, a
Caring,
caring person,
giving person. That's who
family
you are.
oriented,
Yeah.
and caring about other people and stuff.
You
And that's
might
kind of like the way I was last time.
remember your dreams over the next week, because I think you're going to get a little more insight through them about that energy of purpose for this lifetime. Would anybody else like to share?
I'll share, I'm Annette. Well, I went immediately, I've done some past life regressions on my own, and so I always enjoyed them.
Yes.
And I went to a life in New York about 1860. It was, I felt just right at home there. I always feel at home with beautiful things, and now I know why. And why I miss them so much, and I feel like I'm supposed to have them because that's what I had in my last life. A really loving home, and I had wonderful parents, and I was very beautiful, very charming. I played the piano, which I've also played in this life, but I was somewhat vain and self-centered. But I was very high-spirited and caring, but that really didn't develop till after I married when I was about 23, and it was it was a love match. My husband was older, about 12 years older, and a very wonderful person, a very special spiritual person, but it took me, I think, a number of years to really appreciate him, yes, and he taught me a lot. He taught me to be less judgmental about people and to be more giving of myself. I was very centered within my family and the arts and the things that I enjoyed doing very much. I feel like I wanted to stay in that, and I did not want to really go out into the squalor, although I'd see it out there, but I love beauty so much, and I still do, but it was difficult for me to do that. It wasn't until after he died, when I was about 50, and I was really devastated.
Did you feel that your husband in that life is with you in this lifetime and some other person that you have in your life now?
Not now. Not now. have recently just met someone, but it's too soon for me to know. I've had a strong feeling for over a year that this person will be coming into my life, and it's strange because I've met a number of men, and I really only manifested for one, and it's like I'm having all these strange relationships, and I'm going, what are these goals? You know,
Heck,
I don't
let me
want to
see,
go
one
through
A, B, C, or
that.
D.
Yeah, I don't want to deal with it, you
Yeah.
know, because I know what's supposed to come, and but there's
Yes.
a reason for it. But anyway, after my husband died and I finally recovered from his death, then I did go out and begin working with women who were very poor and with children. There was a lot of them in the area in New York at that time, and I was able to start doing a lot of work and a lot of spiritual study as my life went on, and since I was quite wealthy, I was able to do a lot of this, and I think I died when I was about 65, somewhere
Did you
around there.
get a name for yourself in that lifetime?
Well, the name I came up with was Rose.
That was
Try
a
it,
typical name for
numerology.
that era too.
Yes.
It was chosen often.
Was it?
Mhm.
Was it
Yes.
really?
Yeah, it was a 19th century name.
I have just a great love of flowers, and roses are my favorite. And in this lifetime, I realized I've had a lot of lessons to learn, particularly regarding finances. I mean, it's
Was
like
it you that came in as an 8?
The number 8?
yeah, well,
Yeah.
my name's a 7, and the name my mother chose for me I never liked, which was Nancy Ann. And I finally changed it when I was in my 20s to Nanette.
Yes.
Your birth date is an 8?
My birthday is a 7, and my birth date is an 8. My name's a 7.
Yeah.
So I mean, I've had all these financial lessons to learn. It's like every time I have any amount of money, I always, give it away to my daughter,
Oh,
whoever
you
needs it,
Aries.
because it has no meaning to me, and I'm always waiting for more to come.
Cut that out, it
Yeah.
used to have no meaning.
Yeah,
to
it
you.
used to have no meaning to me, and it's like whenever I get it, I can just give it away because I know more is going to come. But
Okay.
it's been difficult lessons for me to learn because I really enjoy beautiful things, and I want to have them, but I realize at the same time that it's okay if I don't. So I enjoy what
Yeah.
little things I have,
Right.
and I've learned to find a lot of pleasure in that, and I feel like my spiritual development has
We started
really
upward.
accelerated a
Yeah.
lot within the last
Yes.
15 years in my life, to a point now where I would just like to be a little more clear on what to do with the rest of my life.
Were you able to see a higher purpose that you came in for?
Well, the
year
higher
back?
purpose that I've known in some ways, although I feel like there's something else also, is that I know I do have a gift of compassion and listening to others, and I find that people just, wherever I'm
Naturally
working, will just
gravitate to
naturally
it,
come to
yeah.
me with their problems, oh, Nanette, this, that, and the other thing, and I really enjoy and have a feeling for just trying to share whatever I have
Yes.
within myself with them. But I guess my really deep feeling is that I'd like to, work in the metaphysical field in some way or another.
In a counseling format?
Yeah, some way or
Yes,
another.
because
and I-
that's a very special gift to have, and it helps others to see more within themselves in that centering energy.
It's just that I don't know quite how to
You will.
get myself there, but I feel that if I keep asking for guidance, it'll come.
Thank you for sharing that. Would anybody else like to share? Hello. Is anybody else awake? No. By the way, Iona is fine. She experienced something and she had to calm
Okay.
down from that. She's okay. She's resting now. If any of you ever feel that you're not completely back, or you've experienced something that you don't quite understand, or how it's relating to you as a person today, please, by all means, let us know, let me know, and we'll discuss that privately, if I can be of some assistance to you. These are all internal knowings and lessons that we've set up for ourselves over eons of time. And I think this is kind of the completion of old karmic energy in this era of our world. And it's nice to have a better understanding understanding of why you're even here. I mean, why did you write that fine print in the contract? You know?
Good.
Without
Right.
glasses yet, you know.
Without being told what it was.
Yeah, but I don't remember writing this or signing this.
Why did I choose
Yes.
this? God, did I really do? I mean, if I'd only known. Oh.
Oh, and would anybody else like to share some of where they went,
I'll
what they
say
did?
a little bit about mine. I've never gotten, in previous attempts, when I've had been in my regression workshops, to get a real sure about what my most recent past life was. And I think it's still, for some reason, I think of like your Cayce being, what was it supposedly, was it Luke supposedly?
Lucius?
Or who it was?
Bainbridge?
No, you have the one at the gospel area.
Lucius. Was one of them, I didn't.
Or was that Charles Thomas?
Lucius said the Aryan journey.
No, that's Lucius, that's right. Thomas was Luke, that's second. And the reason that wasn't given for many, many years, and reading said, was that he would not feel quote unquote too puffed up or, egotistical or something like that. But I have had very definite feelings that, considering my family background and my interest in everything else, was somehow tied in and just absolute fixation with a lot of what went on in this in the world in, say, the first few decades of this century, in, say, the revolutions in the field of physics, and obsession with quotes of Albert Einstein is some way definitely tied in with like an atomic physicist type of role. And yet also I know this ties in very heavily with my Atlantean karma and this type of thing. I'm extremely concerned about the way a lot of the technology involved is either misused or being quite leery, as I once found in this one reading someone who had been had an Atlantean incarnation, and just instinctively in the present life, if you met anyone that was like kind of a son of Belial type, they would just seize up and this kind of thing. And I've always had that feeling about certain types of people and such that were, say, very scientifically oriented, but couldn't see the forest through the trees, about had no spiritual wisdom basically to go along with their knowledge, you might say.
Well, you change that.
Well, I'm talking about them, not me.
Well, you can change that too.
That's true. But, and it was even funny today, I hadn't even thought about this all day long until just when we started doing this, but I felt this real impulse to go over to Santa Cruz and spend some time at the UC Santa Cruz campus. This is where I studied my college career, and where I was studying physics quite heavily at that time. It was kind of interesting. I didn't realize that's why I started this.
Yes.
And,
Could there be a tie-in between the Indian pattern and the super Atlantean scientists?
a tie-in?
Well,
And the
a
patterns.
balancing, because
Well, I think the one balance
one
is,
taking over, the Earth's resources and one being taken over.
possibly. I know there's one certainly that came to me kind of strongly, and a lot of this I've kind of realized, like when I, as I oftentimes do, I mean, people think I'm spacing out, but I'm actually sitting there contemplating
Yes.
things. Realizing very strongly the need to continue my close association with Indians. They've learned very well how to deal with white men these last few hundred years, and a lot can be continually gleaned from them, particularly about learning your protections and how to basically put your knowledge underground, so to speak, all these kinds of things,
Dance
until the proper time was used properly, etc. And yet keep it alive as well, not simply say, well, I'm not going to, as I have in the past, I'm not going to deal with this. I think of one time watching this movie, it was hokey as can be. It was about Atlantis, made in 1961. It was terrible. It was like a Flash Gordon flick, but
Yeah,
there was one line in the movie where one guy, he'd been both a scientist and a priest, and he goes, when I saw the misuse of the scientific knowledge, something, I resolved that I would have absolutely nothing to do with it, stick strictly with the priesthood. When he said that, I was like, boom, that's it.
Hit home, didn't it?
I knew that made an influence in my life. That kind of thing. Let me see what else here. And just saying in terms of like my father knowing a lot of very eminent physicists, including such ones worldwide board of physicists who wanted to use atomic energy. Of course, I think a big part of why it was blacklisted, because the powers that be did not want it. They wanted to use the way they wanted to, not the way he thought it
So
should
many
be. With that kind of
done
thing.
that.
And of course, he had, quote unquote, communist leanings in the sense of true equal sharing, utopian type of society. And of course, that was all twisted around and used against him.
What were the, in case you had associations with either Einstein or Oppenheimer, what were their
What's that?
death dates?
I think Oppenheimer did die after I was born.
And Einstein before?
Yeah,
In case you had worked with him or been associated
Yeah,
with him.
3 or 4 years. In fact, I can remember once, sometimes how people say the strangest things, but there's something to it. I can remember in high school when I was on the football team one day in the locker room, this one guy, he got this really funny thing. He was kidding me about my last name. He goes, "Oh, Dr. Spangenberger, old associate of Dr. Einstein." Like that. I said, "Well, I don't know, maybe so."
Is your last name Spangenberg?
Spangenberger, yeah.
Was there an associate of Einstein?
Not that I know
Is it odd
officially,
for-
but he was just kind of saying that.
And
Oh,
when
there
did
was a whole
Einstein die?
staff of associates of Einstein.
You could well been.
Yeah,
did-
I mean, he'd go out, and do his thing, and they come back and say, here, this is solved, now figure out how I did it.
When did
When
did Einstein die, do you know?
Wasn't-
I mean, 1955.
I thought it was for
And
physics.
of course, his
Yeah.
big interest in unified field theory and that sort of thing, which of course been a big interest of mine,
You
etc.
never know.
And so, I'm not saying I was him, but, and I can remember, like, in my physics classes, they usually have a picture in these books on quantum mechanics about some of these early, I'd say this would be 1920-ish range meetings with a lot of these eminent physicists in Germany. And I just sit there and stare at those pictures.
You knew they were
Very likely
wrong.
be a experience.
Just absolutely transfixed me.
Does he look like any of the members? You might go back and look at the
I
pictures.
don't know. I mean, I could spend the rest of my life going through the history.
Did you get a name for that lifetime?
I'm not sure, actually.
What was the first one you got?
Hmm?
What was the first name you got?
None of that really came into it. It's like it's still not time before it revealed to me.
Did you find out your purpose now? To a better understanding for yourself? Because you know part of it.
Basically, it's ironic that I still feel the need to stay very closely tied with the native people.
Yes.
Because if nothing else, I like to say we're the caretaker from Mother Earth.
That's right.
And if things continue at the present rate, it's going to be put back in the hands of people that know how to take care of it properly.
Did you
And if
still,
all this technology and knowledge and, should we say, higher knowledge of physics, etc., is going to be used in the new age, it would certainly behoove one to be closely associated with those
right,
that are still
and have some
around.
knowledge
good tie-in
and
to the
understanding
experiences.
what the new age physics will do to
Mhm.
the earth, which you do. Now you know why you came in. You knew that last week. You felt the despair. Did you feel that again?
That's okay.
I mean, like from this most recent lifetime.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhat. It wasn't quite
Not
as,
as deep as the
not
other.
quite as grieving, but still kind of a definite sense of despair and sorts.
You've got some fantastic tools to help.
And I think also one thing I just observed, I read some about Albert Einstein. On the one hand, he was somewhat of a reserved fellow, and yet if you really look at a lot of what he said and what he did, he honestly had a deep compassion for the whole humanity. I think the old Chinese saying, "I'm not caring for anyone in particular, it's caring for everyone in general," or something to that
That's right.
effect. And sometimes I feel that way. I mean, people that know me somewhat, sometimes they think like I'm, kind of a little nonchalant, and yet oftentimes I do have this real sense
Where's your
of-
Venus?
I don't know, it should be worked on right now.
You lucky soul, you.
But, I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, oh gosh, I can't remember this offhand. You mean like
Well,
what house? Or?
yeah. You have to check that out.
Yeah. I mean, I've got my chart right sitting at home in my file.
Check it out.
Okay.
See what your Venus is. Anybody else want to share one more? We got time for one more. Go ahead,
Uh,
Betsy.
Everyone else was dancing till 2 a.m. You just definitely not.
I started out in an environment like Ellis Island in a mass of humanity.
Really?
I was about 12 or 13, and it was the mid-1800s, in, New York somewhere. I was with my mother and father, and my father had a beard. We were a Jewish family. And I was anxious to get out of this place. It was filthy and a lot of people, and we weren't doing too well. And so finally, my father called me and said, it's time to go. And we left, but we lived in a rather near poverty situation for several years, and I died very young. I just got sicker and sicker and sicker. I was healthy when I got there, but after living in this environment,
Yes.
I just kind of wilted and died very young. And didn't seem to be much of a purpose to the whole experience. But when I joined my spiritual family afterwards, it was like I'd taken a detour off of my
Felt
path.
pretty good, didn't it?
You mean that life was kind of a detour from
Yeah.
what you had planned?
From what I had been experiencing prior up to that point. It was sort of like,
I'll drop in for a while, it's only gonna be a short
Was
life.
there a purpose? Did they tell you any purpose to the detour?
well, the only thing I got later was that over the different lifespans I had been in different, like, nationalities and stuff, and then it was, different cultures, and then it was that each one of them sort of reached an apex, and
So that you have great compassion and understanding for all people.
well,
as
and
you
then
do.
the source was the same
Yes.
for all of them, and that seemed to be.
Chill on that.
And then when I approached my mother, it was as though you finally got back. All right, let's get on with it. And she was to be my teacher too, and my spiritual life.
In this life?
In this life.
So you had a fortunate mother this time around.
Very, very
How
fortunate.
was it?
And then my father was to be my educator on the other side.
Yeah.
And he
There's
was
affirmation on that one, too.
he was an engineer,
Mhm.
and she was a philosopher.
So you came with a lot of balance this
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Yes.
Maybe you, good karma, having gone through that suffering just before it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah.
But then in this lifetime, I've had to do both. I've had to suffer and I've had a lot of. I was a happy child, although a lot of lonely hours as a child. But I somehow or other retained a happy attitude, and I've had a lot of success. And
Had a lot of experiences.
yeah, pretty all around. Yeah, that's true.
Wonderful experiences, and to me they all ring so true.
Yes.
They feel like such.
But I really related to Nanette when she said, she was in the 1800s, I was there too.
She might have come to visit you as that
And you
little
really?
child.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that be some?
And that'd be interesting when you said like your
Mhm.
life was kind of a detour. That kind of rang a bell. It was like, that first part of my life, I just had this intuitive feeling that it was given to me sort of as a gift in a way that I could enjoy some of this beauty that is so instinctively. I love art and music and dance and paintings, and I just enjoy beauty, in its finest sense. And but then in the last part of my life, I had to get back into my work, and
Into
it's
the routine
like,
again,
okay,
right.
now this life, it really all piled on me, and I just really accepted a lot of
It's
real.
too bad you weren't here for Egypt, Greece, and Rome and all that,
yeah, I really would.
And Lemuria and Atlantis.
Yes, I
you know.
would have loved
Yeah.
that. Would have been wonderful.
We've been-
So.
And I wanted to mention, if anybody would like to experience and research their own soul memories. I have some tapes here that I've taken from one of the workshops that we've done on soul regressions. And also, those that are interested in crystals, one came through, I channel. I never know where we're going, how we're going to get there, or what's going on. And that's what was going on tonight, for those that don't know me. There's one here on crystal pathways that they channeled through to help you feel the sensation of crystals and become in tune with their energy and how they can help you with that.
You have
So-
those available for
Yeah,
sale?
they're right here.
People who
They're
want them?
10 apiece, but because you're off there, I'll sum to you for 8 apiece. I'll give you a discount.
Also, Lexi has an upcoming workshop called Soul Connections Journey. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes, take your paper home and read it.
Okay.
Do we have a
There's
paper
more
on it?
to it, and it keeps coming through every day, so we don't know exactly how it's going to end up when it finally comes around, so we'll find out.
And I'm continuing to do Akashic record reading.
Yes, Lynn's
this-
very good at this.
This series has helped me a lot because I really feel by flooding my subconscious with more understanding of these historical time periods, I hope to be able to offer even more accurate
Yes.
past life attunement through reading forms. So we have lots of things we do in our offering, and we thank you very much for joining us this evening.
And next week, we'll be going into progression,
Your
into the
future.
future. And, oh, excuse me, I wanted to ask, did anybody not come to the Earth in that last lifetime? Were they in another galaxy or universe?
I
or
was having
planet?
a hard time figuring out exactly when I was born, and like when I died and the one before that at the time. Because I wasn't exactly sure also when I died and the one before that, whether it was 1900, whether it was 1890 or 1900 or exactly when, it's hard to tell. But
Because there definitely are other living soul energies besides here on this plane.
Oh, yeah, well, absolutely, for
And
sure.
once in a while, you
Yeah.
do get to experience them, remember those.
Oh, that'd be
You might have
nice.
experienced the sojourn on that.
Yes.
Planetary sojourn, a rest period. Did anyone have an experience like that?
Sometimes people do not come down here all the time, they like to just kind
Yeah.
of kick around out there and say,
Rest,
well,
yeah,
you know,
they're
I
might
feel
kick
that's
back a
where
little." Yeah.
I've been in between that period until I reincarnated into this life, because I have a difficult time dealing with the denseness
Yes.
of this physical
This
planet. I
is
mean, I love the
vibration,
planet
yes.
dearly, but, just all the real heavy, the dirt and the noise and sometimes people and just the denseness is the best way I can describe it, bothers me tremendously sometimes.
Well, there's also planetary colors that people vibrate to. And there's from they've spent more lifetimes on a different energy, and they vibrate to those colors too. And in the progression that we'll be doing next week, we're also going to see, in that time and energy, if there's some knowledge we can bring back that might help our civilization now, if there's anything we can do personally about that. And that's where we're going next week.
I intend to share some information on some of touching a little bit on the Cayce prophecies that might pertain to us as we go past the year 2000, and also to talk about what an Arcturian soul is and what it takes to graduate from here, and then what happens, and a little bit about that as
Good.
well.
And we thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can I ask you something? Are you gonna have any more of these, sessions
We've been
like this?
videotaping all these. It will probably be towards the end of October, beginning of November, when we start this series over again.
Again, and then you have an
Yeah.
opportunity for those of you missed, as well as some
Because
of you.
there's much going on.
Yeah, we really need a lot of material.
Oh, great, oh, that's wonderful. Thank you
Maybe,
very
maybe
much.
we'll have more channel drawings by then too. Who knows?
Oh, yes,
I'm
thank
sorry.
you, Lloyd. If we don't have your name and address.
Oh, please do give it to us. Yeah, I did. Be happy to mail you out information.
Pardon me?
Sign-up sheet.
Okay, if you
underneath the
don't have
rainbow
your name, address, and phone number, if you could leave that, then we'll be able to let you know what's coming up.
do you want these?
If we already have it, then we don't need it.
They're for more of the Atlantean, Lemurian, Egypt
I don't know, some of those
You
might
want
be
some of these
interesting
too?
too.
We have been
associate
doing
who's interested in
a
some-
research on past life energy and
They
detailed
can make, they need to make
information.
more sense so that they can
Are you
contact
sure
me.
you don't want to keep it ready and give us a copy? Yes, you do.
It's your name and address and phone number on every.
No, I did. Don't you have a-
If you want to keep them, if any of you would like to share a
Once
copy of the
again, it's all-
regression,
it's
either
all
now
in my
or by
head.
copying it and giving it to us later, then we're talking.
Tonight they're 8, usually they're 10. Sorry. This one is, I think the wrong set. This is the chicken to your other set. This is supposed to have.
That one right there.
Were those particular?
Those go off the sofa?
Oh, yeah, I'll take it.
Similar to